How great it feels to be free." The young man spread his arms wide, wanting to embrace the entire world. He had just been released from prison. Diego was 33 years old when he got out of jail, a time when he could start his life anew, but things hadn't gone well for him. In his youth, one evening on his way back from work, he had stood up for a girl who was being harassed by 3 drunk guys. Unfortunately, things went wrong, and during the fight, one of the thugs fell, hit his head on a rock, and died before the ambulance arrived. Diego was sentenced to prison. His wife didn't wait for him and soon remarried. She told their little daughter that her father had gone far away forever. While he was in prison, his mother passed away, and his brother sold the family home, taking all the money for himself. So, when Diego was released, he didn't know what to do or how to live. He had no home, no job, no friends, and no family. He was a good, decent person, but who would believe that now? For several days, he wandered around the city looking for work, but without success. He decided to head to the countryside, where there's always a need for workers, and maybe someone would rent him a corner. With no money, he set off on foot with a backpack on his shoulders. The city ended, and he reached a river, deciding to follow its bank where it was cooler and the summer heat was less oppressive. The river wound through a meadow overgrown with tall grass and disappeared into a small forest. What beauty, Diego thought, involuntarily admiring the landscape and the river's distant bend. He dreamed of settling in such a remote place, getting a cat and a dog, and living in peace and harmony, fishing for his meals. He took off his small backpack, undressed slowly, and plunged into the water headfirst. Swimming underwater, he felt as if the river was washing away all the bitterness and sorrows of his past life and his regrets about how things had turned out. Diego stretched out on the grass, using his backpack as a pillow, and gazed at the sky for a long time. His soul yearned for nature and beauty. He woke up to someone cautiously trying to pull the backpack from under his head. Diego opened his eyes and quickly sat up, seeing a small furry creature next to him, gripping the strap with its teeth. "Hey, let go," he shouted, yanking the backpack away. The little creature yelped and whimpered. It was a small gray puppy that looked like a husky. "Where did you come from?" Diego asked, looking around for its owner. The puppy stared at him intently. "Are you lost? But how could you get lost here? There are no houses nearby, something's not right." Diego took a closer look at the little animal. "Wow! It's not even a dog, it's a wolf pup," he realized. The little predator was busy sniffing Diego's backpack. "I see," Diego sighed sadly, "you must be hungry, just as lonely and hungry as I am." He patted the pup's head. Diego opened his backpack, took out some bread and canned meat. "Here you go, little one, eat," he said, placing the open can in front of the puppy and taking a bite of bread himself. After they finished eating, Diego slung his backpack over his shoulders and prepared to leave. "Well, this is where our paths diverge. Your home is the forest, and I have nowhere to go. I'll continue my search for a home." He resolutely started walking along the river. But the wolf pup had no intention of staying in the forest. It leaped up and followed him without hesitation. Diego realized he wouldn't be able to shake off the pup and would have to take it with him. "Just don't lag behind," he encouraged the little animal, whom he named Cruz. "Let's set up camp by the river, farther from the city. The villages there are poorer, and the people are simpler. Maybe someone needs workers like us." In the morning, they continued their journey and by evening stumbled upon a small village with just a few houses. One rundown cabin stood on the outskirts, right near the village. Only witches probably live in places like this, Diego thought. He knocked on the door. An old woman appeared at the door. "Granny, do you need a worker for your farm?" "I don't charge much, a bowl of soup and some sweet tea will do." Mrs. Anita, or Granny Anita, turned out to be not a witch but a very kind and welcoming woman. Sitting at the table, eating hot soup with freshly baked bread, Diego told his new acquaintance everything that had happened in his life. "If you're afraid, Granny Anita, to let an ex-con into your house, just say so. I'll move on and won't be offended." "I'm not afraid of anything or anyone anymore," Granny Anita said, picking up a photo frame from the dresser. It held a portrait of a young man. "This is Leandro, my son. He was killed in prison 10 years ago. They didn't even let me bury him properly. They hid everything, and I never got justice. He was a good man, always fought for the truth. That's why he lost his freedom first, then his life. So stay, son, live here. I'll prepare a room for you. Granny, there's a wolf pup that followed me from the forest. Will you take him in too?" "Why not? A wolf won't come to a bad person. Both of you can stay." So Diego and the wolf pup moved into a room in Granny Anita's house. Diego helped Granny Anita around the house, digging the garden, fetching water, chopping wood, fixing the roof, and repairing the house a bit. Granny Anita was delighted with her new tenant. She grew attached to him like a son, and the wolf pup, meanwhile, grew into a handsome animal, loyal and very attached to Diego. The three of them lived together happily. Diego enjoyed it, and Granny Anita felt less lonely now that she wasn't alone. When Cruz grew up, Diego started taking him into the forest, making Cruz his partner on daily long walks. In the forest, they moved separately. While Diego gathered mushrooms or birch twigs, Cruz ran around on his own wolf business, appearing next to Diego from time to time, as if out of nowhere. They lived in the village for a couple of years. The local head liked Diego, and the hard-working young man was offered a job as a forester in the local hunting grounds. One harsh winter day, Diego got into trouble. Climbing a small slope, he slipped and fell. When he tried to get up, he realized he had injured his right leg, possibly broken it, and his radio had fallen into the snow, making it impossible to find. It was lost somewhere in the snowdrift. The nearest house was 7 or 8 kilometers away, but in his condition, the distance was insurmountable. He understood he couldn't reach the village on his own. What should he do with a broken leg, no means of communication, and the temperature at -15 degrees Celsius? While Diego was contemplating his dire situation, Cruz appeared next to him. The animal sniffed his owner, nudging his face as if to say, "Don't worry, I'm with you. I won't leave you." Then Diego knew what to do. Following his owner's commands, the wolf dragged Diego and his gear to the nearest path. There, Diego used a knife to cut several long sticks, made a stretcher, and splinted his leg to minimize discomfort. He tied a harness with hemp rope and hitched it to Cruz. "You'll be a sled dog," Diego said to the wolf, and they set off. The predator dashed through the snowy forest so swiftly that within a couple of hours, they could already see the lights in the windows of the houses. Granny Anita burst into tears when she saw Cruz with the injured Diego in the yard. Local villagers, noticing the man lying on the stretcher, quickly helped him up and carried him into the house. Diego had gotten very cold during the 2 hours without movement, but he didn't suffer any serious frostbite. They quickly took him to the hospital and put a cast on his broken leg. All this time, Cruz waited for his owner, sitting motionless in the hospital lobby. No amount of persuasion from Granny Anita could make him go home. Only when Diego, now in a wheelchair, patted him on the ear did Cruz accept the treat that Anita had prepared for him.